Hello, today we're going to talk about Joseph's plight with unforgiveness. From my book, Forgiveness is the Highest and Greatest Act of Love. And my name is Dr. Sylvia Black, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today. Now, in order to understand Joseph's plight with unforgiveness, most of you know the story, but I will have to tell you the story in order for you to understand. Okay, now like I said, most of you know the story. But starting in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, verses 1 through 36, New Living Translation, it reads thusly, and this will be a two-part at least. So Jacob settled again in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived as a foreigner. This is the account of Jacob and his family. When Joseph was 17 years old, he often tended to his father's flocks. He worked for his half-brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah, which were Jacob's maids. But Joseph reported to his father some of the bad things his brothers were doing. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of the other children, because Joseph had been born to him of his old age. Plus, he had been born of his wife, which was considered his biological child. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind word to him. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly my bundles stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine. His brothers responded, So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more, because all of his dreams and the way he talked about them. Soon Joseph had another dream, and again he told his brothers about it. Listen, I have had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and the 11 stars bowed down before me. This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers, but his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that, he asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow low to the ground before you? But while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dream meant. Soon after this, Joseph's brothers went to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem. Your brothers are pasturing the sheep at Shechem. Get ready, and I will send you to them. I'm ready to go, Joseph replied. Go and see how your brothers and the flocks are getting along. Jacob said, Then come back and bring me a report. So Jacob sent him, on his way, and Joseph traveled to Shechem from their home in the valley of Hebron. When he arrived there, a man from the area noticed him wandering around the countryside. What are you looking for? He asked. I'm looking for my brothers, Joseph replied. Do you know where they are pasturing their sheep? Yes, the man told him, they have moved on from here. But I heard they say, let's go on to Dothan. So Joseph followed his brothers to Dothan and found them there. Now this is when Joseph was sold into slavery. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. Okay, here comes the dreamer, they said. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We can tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. When Rebekah heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. When Reuben heard of their scheme, he came to Joseph's rescue. Let's not kill him, he said. Why should we shed any blood? Let's just throw him into the empty cistern here in the wilderness. Let's just throw him into the empty cistern here in the wilderness, and then he'll die without our laying a hand on him. Reuben was secretly planning to rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So when Joseph arrived, his brothers ripped off his beautiful robe he was wearing. Then they grabbed him and threw him into the cistern. Now the cistern was empty, and there was no water in it. Then just as they were sitting down to eat, they looked up and they saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, ball, and aromatic resin to Gilead down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to the Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." And the brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by Joseph's brothers, pulled him up out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took him to Egypt. Sometime later, Reuben returned to get Joseph out of the cistern. When he discovered that Jacob was missing, he tore his clothes in grief. Then he went back to his brothers and lamented, "The boy is gone. What will we do now? What will I do now?" Then the brothers killed a young goat and dipped Joseph's robe in the blood. They sent the beautiful robe to their father with his message, "Look at what we found. Doesn't this robe belong to your son?" Well, now all of a sudden he's his son and not their brothers. Their father recognized it immediately. "Yes," he said, "it is my son's robe. A wild animal must have eaten him. Joseph has clearly been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes and dressed himself in burlap, and he mourned deeply for his son for a long time. His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "I will go to my grave mourning for my son," he would say, and then he would sleep, and then he would weep. Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. The king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. Of course, Joseph did not know what was happening to him, being naive and all. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard. May the Lord add blessing to the reading here and doing. It was mighty powerful and magnanimous word. Of course, Joseph did not know what was happening to him, being naive and all. Joseph was Jacob's biological son. His stepbrothers were the sons of his maids. And the only reason why the sons were older than Joseph was because Jacob's wife was unable, at the time, she did not get pregnant. So Jacob's wife suggested to Jacob that he mate with his maids and he will have sons. But then God heard her cry, and then she became pregnant with Joseph and Benjamin. Had she waited on the Lord, however, she would have had 2 sons instead of, 8, I think 8 or 9 of them. But the sons that were born of the maids were the ones that were trifling. They were the ones that were bad and ill-mannered. They just didn't have no discipline about themselves. They just did what they wanted to do. And then they were jealous of Joseph because Joseph was being treated with more love and kindness than the other brothers were. But, you have to look at their behavior. You look at the way they were behaving and you say, well, hey, if you behave that badly, sometimes, it's argumentative. Your parent treating one child differently than you treat the other child. It's a learned experience. You have to learn how to try to treat each child equally, regardless of how bad they act or behave. Okay, however, that was the case here in Jacob's case. He treated Joseph better. He gave him a robe of many colors, and he was more protective of him. He was younger and naive. Okay, and he loved him more because he was the son of his wife and not of his maids, him and Benjamin. Okay, and but you have to realize that the dream that Joseph had was built on, it came from God. Okay, and a lot of people don't have dreams. They dream, and that's all they do is dream. And then they wake up and they go about their life, but they pay no attention to their dream. They think that dreams have no value. But if you realize that this world was built on dreams, there's one example that I had learned when I was in college, and they used to talk about Henry Ford all the time. Henry Ford is a great example of a man who had a dream. Okay, he had the monopoly. A monopoly means that you was the only one that was able to capitalize on that one item. He was the only one that made cars. He was the first and the only one for a time that made cars. People traveled by horse and buggy or by foot. Okay, I guess their jobs were very close by, so they could walk there, close enough that they could walk there within a half an hour or whatever. If you could afford to get a horse or a trolley or whatever, then you would get one. You get a ride that way, otherwise you'd be walking. Most people walked where they had to go. So there were no traffic lights, there were nothing. So here's Henry Ford. He makes cars, all in black. And of course you had to be able to afford to buy it. But many people were able to afford to buy it. So now this one man's dream, okay, had created thousands and thousands of jobs. Even today, hundreds of years later. Now, I don't know if he's alive still. I don't think he's still alive, but I know that there's a Henry Ford Foundation. That's how much money the man had, that he's able to now become a philanthropist and donate money to nonprofit organizations to help them. Okay? But here's a man who had a dream, and he built cars based on his dream and created millions of jobs. And he went down in history. I mean, look at it. He created the power. He created the traffic light. Okay. He created the Motor Vehicles Bureau. He created an insurance company. Because out of his dream, now you had to develop all these other organizations to regulate the driving. Okay. It had to be regulated. There had to be some kind of an order to it. And they used to say in college that he lost the monopoly because now his competitors were making cars in different colors. And I say that the man went down in history because we're still talking about him today. He was the first one to make cars. And his vision was turned into a dream, which turned into reality. And he inspired his competitors to make cars in different colors. It wasn't that he lost the monopoly. He gained his name to go down in history forever because of his dream. Because he dared to dream. He dared to take a chance and turn his dream into reality. He dared not to listen to the competitors, not to listen to the people. I'm sure that there were people who talked him down, who tried to talk him out of his dream. A car, that was something nobody had ever heard of. Everybody was used to, traveling by other means. And here he's talking about inventing a car. Never heard of it. It's what they call change. The only thing that's constant that will always stay the same is change. And this is an instance of change. A lot of people can't accept change because they can't visualize it in their head. They don't have the same dream. They don't have the same inspiration from God. And you better believe it, anything good like this comes from God. It doesn't come from the devil. Okay, the people, the naysayers were the ones that were, talking against him. Very similar to, I can't think of his name now, but, he had the monopoly. He had the monopoly for a while, and he gained notoriety as a result of it. And of course, he was rich, became rich, well, filthy rich, wealth, And so here's a man who had a dream, and he took his dream and he visualized it, and he made it. He made cars from it. He created many jobs as a result of his invention, and he inspired his competitors. That's the bottom line to that. So now here's Joseph now. He's getting these dreams, and he's, I'm not sure if he knew where they were coming from. He probably did know that they came from God, but he's inspiring them. All he's doing is telling him his dream. He's not pointing the finger and saying, "You're going to bow down to me, trifling brothers." He's not, vindictive like that. He's not haughty. He's not proud of anything. He's just a simple boy doing as his father tells him to do, being obedient to God and to his parents, which is what he's supposed to be, and, going about and doing his thing. His brothers were the ones that were the trifling ones. His brothers were the ones that was out of control. Okay, and so here now, the brothers decide to sell him into slavery instead of killing him, because they hated him. You see what unforgiveness will do for you? They hated their own brother because Joseph had a dream and they didn't. But it was the kind of dream. See, the brother, Joseph was younger than him. He's naive. He probably was skinny, but he's good looking. And here the brothers were older. They was muscular probably, and stronger, and smarter, of course, because they were older. Not necessarily smart in the right way, not in book knowledge. I would say they were smart in street knowledge, because that's all they did was, meddle into other people's business, according to what the Bible had to say about them. They was always doing things they ain't had no business doing. And here's Joseph, a smaller brother, talking about, "You gonna bow down to me." And they're thinking bowing down to you is a sign of authority. And here you younger than me. You ain't nobody. This is what they're thinking. You see, but how many of y'all know that God will use the least of us to bring about and turn us into the greatest? Okay? Come on, somebody talk to me over here. Now, of course, Joseph didn't know what was happening, but he did know he was being abused. He was being used. And his brothers wasn't treating him right. He was probably screaming and, "What are you doing to me? Leave me alone," So no telling what kind of a background, okay, he had. What kind of background the maids had, They were probably trifling just as well. Or either that or they raised their sons with very little discipline. Okay, the reason why they just got so out of control. You see, I believe Jacob had waited on the Lord and trusted in his, if he had waited on the Lord and trusted in his promise, Joseph would not have been sold into slavery. But then you have to look at it, and that was a God-ordained move. Sort of like a lot of things that happen to you and I today. A lot of things that happen that are not comfortable, that hurt, that are painful, that you sit and cry about years later, that you even want to get revenge out of, and it's hard to forgive those people or that person for what they've done or what they're doing to you, because it seems so traumatic and so out of place, considering and compared to what you're asking God for, and for what you're believing in, and your behavior. You are serving God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, and then now God turns around and allows catastrophe to happen. For example, you asking God to hold on to the job and everything like that, and then next thing you know, you get fired. Well, how is getting fired going to move you up into your next level, get you that promotion that you want? Well, maybe it won't get you a promotion in that particular company, but now you can go off and you can get a job with another company making more money with a better and a higher responsibility. Okay? So, these are things, you pray to God for something, and He shuts the door in one area. Okay? Or, the door starts closing, and here you are tugging on that door trying to keep it open. But yet you pray to God for something, and He closes the door. So now you think all catastrophe has happened and it's taken place. So now God, now you get over the emotional aspect of it. And here now God presents another opportunity to you. Better pay, better this, better that. It's closer to what you wanted. Here you ask God for something. You say you're going to put it in His hands, but then you take it back. Okay, and then you do things in your own will. You take matters into your own hands. God shuts the door, And then you think, oh, hell done broke loose. And so now God is trying to get a message to you and tell you that I'm about to move you into your next level of anointing. I will not leave you nor forsake you. I've never seen the righteous forsaken. Trust me and I'll deliver. You asked me for it. So why not trust me that I can deliver it and give it to you? Okay? So if you look at it, like I said, from a spiritual standpoint of view, Joseph being sold into slavery was a God-ordained move, as I said. It had to happen that way in order for the situation to turn around, in order for, many people to be saved from hunger. God gave Joseph the dream to save the land of hunger. Okay? Because that's what inevitably happened for all of you who know the story. For you who don't know the story, I'm going to tell it to you. Okay? One door closed so another door could open. Now Joseph didn't know what door that was going to be, but he knew that if he kept serving, that eventually God was going to move in. He waited and waited on the Lord, and God renewed his strength, and he blessed him, and God got glorified, and his dream came to pass. But God used Joseph for his mighty work. It didn't look like Joseph was being used at first by God. It just looked like all hell was breaking loose and he was going down for the count, and that's all she wrote. Which is what happens in a lot of our lives. That's what it looks like. But that's not the reality of it. You have to look at it from the physical point of view, and you have to look at it from the spiritual point of view. Okay, for all of those of us who serve God, and all of those of us who lean on God and ask God for certain things and trust and believe in him that he's going to get it. You have to trust in him. God loves to answer prayers, and you have to believe that before you even open up your mouth and ask him, that God had already answered the prayer because he knew what was going to come out your mouth. Okay? So, isn't it amazing that how situations and circumstances that look like you're going down for the count are really in an effort to uplift you and perhaps even save others in the process? You're not just here for yourself. You're here to help yourself and to be a blessing to other people. Okay, so you have to look at things like that. A lot of things ain't going to happen until God sends you certain places so that you can be a blessing to people, or, it could happen the opposite, the other way around. Joseph was accused of a crime that he did not commit, all because of hatred and revenge. They hated him for something he didn't do, and they wanted to get him back. He was different, and they couldn't understand why he was different. They said, let's kill him and let's see what becomes of his dreams now. They were trying to stop his dreams from coming to pass. They didn't want to see him succeed. They were jealous of him. The brothers didn't have a vision like Joseph did. They were too busy being trifling and causing trouble. So when Joseph presented to them his dream that his brothers hated him because he was different, like I said, dreams are something that are unfamiliar to his brothers, and some unfamiliar to a lot of people. Some people, all they do is dream. And other people dream and they turn their dreams into reality. And those are special people who can do that, who take a chance. And I don't even like to say the word failure, because even if you don't accomplish what you dream this time, you don't succeed at what you plan on doing right away. If you get a lot of people that say no, that's not a failure. That's just an inspiration to go on and continue until you find some people that's going to say yes. Okay? Come on, somebody, talk to me. Now, God did not speak to them. He spoke to Joseph in a vision in the night. Like sometimes you and I have dreams, but we pass them off and we don't take them seriously. Like I said before, try and remember your dreams. They could actually be a message from God trying to get something across to you. You've been praying for a blessing, and this is God's way of answering. So sometimes God uses the least of us to bring about, and to bring about the good in the worst of us. And I'll say in the best of us, because we have a lot of good in us. Joseph wasn't born in royalty, but he had a gift. And the gift was worth gold. It was worth millions. It was better than silver and gold, because it was given to him directly from God. It was a gift, and that gift turned into gold and silver. It stabilized his life. It just didn't result in money. It resulted in a complete formation of making him whole. Okay? A gift that would change the course of salvation throughout his dreams. Like I said, this world was built on dreams, and I talked to you about Ford already. About how they used to talk about Ford in college. But Joseph was again tempted in chapter 39 when he was assigned in Potiphar's house. Okay, Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph for herself intimately, lest she probably wanted all her slaves. And they probably all succumbed, but Joseph didn't. And you know how people are when you turn them down. They got all the money in the world, and here you are. To them, you look like you're a peon. Okay? You know what I mean? You look like you're a peon to them, and they're like, who this person think they are turning me down? Don't they know who I am? And this is their attitude. And so they get angry, and now they want to destroy you because you don't want to give in to them. After all, you got to need them, you know what I mean? Who you think you are turning them down? You ain't got nothing. This is what they think. But you have to remember, a lot of times people, we have more than what, like a gift from God is worth it. You see how it formulated Joseph and made his whole life completely whole. His marriage life, he got him a job, and then he did get into the position where his brothers and his family, not only did they bow down to him, but you had a nation of people that bowed down to him. He was put second in command, okay, and he was a ruler in that respect. He got married, he had children, his whole life became completely different. He was no longer that little boy that went after his brothers to see what they were doing. Now he was a man in control of his own destiny. Come on, somebody talk to me. Okay? All because he had a dream and he followed his dream. Okay, and in this case, Joseph had refused Potiphar's wife's advances, and she grabbed his clothing on the way in a desperate attempt to try to grab him and pull him back to her. And he ran off anyway, and then she used that piece of cloth to say that he attacked her, and she tried to get him off of her. And they had him locked up again. So he's a two-time criminal now for a crime that he did not commit. But then even in jail, he was still interpreting dreams. Well, I'm going to continue with this next time. Just remember that this world is built on dreams, and don't stop dreaming, honey. Don't stop turning your dreams into reality. Don't just dream and let the dream go. Consider that as a message from God, something that He wants you to do in your life, what He's trying to put you into your divine and perfect future.